Well, I don't know exactly. I mean,
That's a sign.
150, I don't know.
When you don't know exactly, that usually means a lot.
Well, I collect them. They're 50s and 60s vintage guitars.
On the night of the 2nd of October 2017, paramedics raced to a home in Malibu after a frantic call from Tom Petty's wife. The music legend, who had just wrapped up a tour celebrating 40 years of his career, was found unconscious and his heart had stopped. Just days before, he had been performing in front of huge crowds, singing with the same unforgettable, raspy voice that fans had loved for decades. When the coroner's report came out, the heartbreaking details became public. It found a mix of prescription medications in his system, including fentanyl, oxycodone, Xanax, and other drugs used to manage the intense pain from a serious hip injury that had worsened after the tour. The man who wrote "I Won't Back Down" kept pushing through that pain until his body could not handle it anymore. Tom Petty's story is about much more than fame. Behind the calm smile and messy blonde hair was a man full of surprises. He grew up with a father known for harsh behavior, yet he went on to write songs that made millions of people feel strong and free. Even though he looked relaxed on stage, he quietly dealt with intense stage fright, along with personal struggles, addiction, and failed marriages. The more people learned about his life, the clearer it became that those simple songs came from years of pain, determination, and non-stop grit. Long before the spotlight, Tom Petty's life started somewhere completely different. He was born on the 20th of October 1950 in Gainesville, Florida, where dusty roads, modest homes, and heavy southern heat shaped a quiet world that seemed far away from rock stardom. Inside the Petty family home, peace was hard to find. Tom's mother, Kitty Petty, worked at the local tax office, while his father, Earl Petty, worked in construction and was known for his explosive temper. Drinking, gambling, and angry outbursts made home feel tense. Instead of enjoying a carefree childhood, Tom spent much of his time trying to stay out of trouble and avoid setting off another argument. His younger brother, Bruce, figured out how to earn their father's approval through sports and following the rules. Tom took a different path. He was quiet, loved drawing, and spent hours lost in his imagination. When life at home became too much, television became his escape. It opened a window to places far beyond Florida, showing bright stages, big cities, and a life that felt impossible to reach. Everything changed after an uncle, who worked on movie sets, brought Tom to watch the filming of Follow That Dream. There, he saw Elvis Presley in person for the first time. That unforgettable moment stayed with him, and soon his favorite slingshot was replaced with a growing collection of Elvis records. Then another life-changing moment arrived when the Beatles appeared on The Ed Sullivan Show. For many Americans, it was history in the making. For Tom, it felt like a whole new future had opened up. Music quickly became his biggest passion, and by 16 he had joined a local band called The Epics, playing in garages, schools, and small local venues where he finally felt at home. While many people his age were focused on finding steady jobs, Tom Petty had his eyes locked on something much bigger. He believed California was where his real future began. By the late 1960s, playing small shows around Gainesville was no longer enough. Music had become more than an escape from life at home. It had become the only road he wanted to follow. Around 1970, Petty joined forces with a group of Florida musicians, several of whom would stay by his side for years, to form Mudcrutch. They practiced in hot garages with worn-out equipment, building a sound inspired by the Byrds and the Rolling Stones. But Tom stood out for one reason. He wasn't just chasing success, he wanted music to be his ticket out of Florida. That dream pushed the band to take a huge gamble. They packed up and moved to Los Angeles, hoping to break into the rock scene. Between 1971 and 1973, Mudcrutch played tiny clubs where noisy crowds and thick cigarette smoke often buried their performances. The money was scarce, but little by little, they built a loyal following. Music industry insiders eventually started paying attention to the band, with the raspy-voiced frontman and classic rock sound. That buzz led to a deal with Shelter Records. In 1974, Mudcrutch released Depot Street, a single that captured the country rock style Tom was becoming known for and hinted that bigger opportunities might be ahead. But the music scene was moving in a different direction, and Depot Street barely made an impact. The record label reacted fast. Mudcrutch was dropped, and only Tom Petty was offered a future as a solo artist. To many, that sounded like a big break. To Tom, it felt like a slap in the face. He never saw the band as musicians who could be replaced. They were friends who had left Florida with him, crashed on couches, and chased the same dream together. Being told to leave them behind created growing tension between Petty and the label. Before long, Mudcrutch split up, and each member went their own way. By 1975, Tom decided he wasn't done with the people who had stood beside him. He reached out to the former members and brought the group back together under a new name, Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. The name reflected both his own journey and the struggles they had already survived, making it clear they were ready for another shot. The band started rehearsing from scratch with fresh energy. The guitars hit harder, the sound became tighter, and Tom was more determined than ever. Early setbacks had taught him one lesson: a dream could disappear overnight if you let someone else control it. The Heartbreakers quickly developed a style that stood apart from Mudcrutch. Mike Campbell's guitar work became sharper, Ben Montench's organ added depth, and Tom's raspy voice gave every song a mix of grit and determination. When their first album arrived in 1976, it struggled to gain attention in the United States. Across the Atlantic, though, things looked different. In the United Kingdom, American Girl and Breakdown began catching listeners' attention on radio stations, giving the band its first real taste of momentum. The excitement overseas soon made its way back to the United States. As more people discovered the album, it steadily grew in popularity and eventually earned gold certification. For Tom Petty, it was proof that success did not always happen overnight. Sometimes, sticking with the plan paid off. 2 years later, the band released You're Gonna Get It after spending countless hours on the road. The album reached the Billboard Top 30, marking a major step forward. The songs sounded stronger, the guitars hit harder, and Petty's style became even clearer. He was becoming known as a songwriter who could tell powerful stories through straightforward rock music. Then came a battle that shook the music business. In 1979, while finishing Damn the Torpedoes, MCA Records planned to sell the album for more than the usual price. Petty strongly opposed the move because he believed fans should not have to pay extra. He even said he was prepared to risk everything to fight the decision. The dispute turned into a rare showdown between a recording artist and a major label. In the end, MCA backed down, and the album was released at the regular price. The gamble paid off in a huge way. Damn the Torpedoes sold more than 3 million copies in the United States, while Refugee and Don't Do Me Like That became radio favorites. Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers were no longer an up-and-coming band. They had become one of the biggest names in American rock. In 1981, they returned with Hard Promises as another debate over album prices was beginning. Petty answered the label the same way he had before he refused to accept higher album prices. After intense negotiations, the price stayed the same. During that stressful period, The Waiting became one of his signature songs, capturing determination and patience with a classic rock sound that connected with fans everywhere. Hard Promises quickly sold more than 1 million copies, giving the band an even stronger place in American rock. A year later, Long After Dark kept them on the road with another busy tour. You Got Lucky stood out for its slightly more electronic style, showing the band was willing to explore new sounds without losing its identity. By 1985, Southern accents took an even bolder direction. The recording process was challenging at times, but Don't Come Around Here No More, created with Dave Stewart, became the album's biggest highlight. Its surreal Alice in Wonderland-inspired music video received heavy rotation on MTV and became one of the era's most memorable visuals. As the crowds grew larger and the spotlight became even brighter, Tom Petty remained driven but never completely comfortable with success. The band's non-stop touring schedule kept expanding, and by 1986, they entered another major chapter by hitting the road with Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan was already one of the biggest names in music, and countless songwriters admired the way he wrote. Touring with him gave Tom Petty a front-row seat to a completely different style of performing. Dylan often changed his set list without warning and even reinvented familiar songs on stage. Watching that night after night changed the way Petty thought about music. As the tour rolled across America, long bus rides and late-night conversations about songwriting left a lasting mark on him. Petty started leaning towards simpler, more emotional songs, putting melody and honest feeling ahead of flashy production. A year later, Let Me Up was released. While it wasn't a flop, the response was far less enthusiastic than the band had become used to. Years of non-stop touring, difficult recording sessions, and repeated clashes with record labels had started wearing Petty down. The songs reflected a darker mood, and he felt a growing distance within the band. Then everything changed in 1988. Petty joined the traveling Wilburys, a supergroup that almost nobody saw coming. Alongside George Harrison, Roy Orbison, Bob Dylan, and Jeff Lynne, he helped create Traveling Wilburys Volume 1. What began as a casual collaboration quickly became a massive success, selling more than 5 million copies and surprising the entire music world. Working with the Traveling Wilburys brought back something Tom Petty had been missing: the simple joy of writing songs. It reminded him of the days when he first picked up a guitar in a Gainesville garage. That fresh burst of inspiration pushed him to take a major step and record a solo album. In 1989, Full Moon Fever was released and became one of the biggest moments of his career. The album featured brighter melodies, a freer style, and some of his most unforgettable songs. Free Fallon became a radio favorite. I Won't Back Down delivered a message of determination, and Running Down a Dream stood out with its powerful guitar work. The album sold more than 5 million copies and proved that Tom Petty could shine on his own as well as with a band. Instead of slowing down, he returned to the Heartbreakers with even more confidence and fresh ideas. In 1991, the band released Into the Great Wide Open. The record explored Hollywood dreams, ambition, and the realities of fame through polished production and thoughtful storytelling. Learning to Fly became one of its defining songs, with a calm, reflective sound that seemed to echo Petty's own life and experiences. The album earned platinum certification, reinforcing his place among America's biggest rock artists. As the 1990s continued, his music became more personal, shaped by years of touring, private struggles, and growing reflections about life and time. In 1994, Tom Petty released Wildflowers, and it revealed a different side of his music. The loud, hard-driving rock of earlier years gave way to a calmer, more thoughtful sound. Songs like You Don't Know How It Feels, You Wreck Me, and Wildflowers showed a deeply personal style that many critics still consider the finest work of his career. The album sold more than 3 million copies in the United States, and its songs quickly became fan favorites at concerts, with audiences singing every word. 2 years later, Petty explored a new challenge by creating songs and music from She's the One, the soundtrack for the film She's the One. Working on movie music gave him room to experiment with softer rock, folk, and pop influences while keeping his signature sound. Another huge milestone arrived in 2002 when Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It was more than an award; it recognized decades of music that had connected with generations of listeners. The songs that first played on radio stations in the 1970s had become lasting classics of American rock. Petty showed no signs of slowing down. In 2006, he released Highway Companion, which climbed to number 4 on the Billboard 200. Its relaxed, reflective songs captured the feeling of endless highways and long journeys, echoing the path Petty himself had traveled throughout his remarkable career. 4 years later, Mojo took the band in a blues rock direction, filled with longer guitar jams and a rawer sound. It climbed to number 2 on the Billboard chart, proving Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers could still compete with a new generation of artists. Then came an even bigger surprise. In 2014, Hypnotic Eye debuted at number 1 on the Billboard 200, the first chart-topping album of Petty's career. After nearly 40 years of recording, the musician who had once left Gainesville chasing a dream finally reached the top of the American album charts. In 2017, Petty and the Heartbreakers launched a tour celebrating their 40th anniversary. Tickets disappeared fast, and arenas across the country filled with fans eager to hear the songs that had shaped decades of rock music. Concerts brought together several generations of listeners. Some had followed Petty since the 1970s, while others had only recently discovered his music. The performances felt like a celebration of a career that had become part of American rock history. Away from the spotlight, though, Petty's personal life followed a very different path. That story began years earlier in Gainesville, Florida, where he met Jane Benyo while they were still in high school. There were no record deals or fame back then, just two young people in a small southern town and a future rock musician who spent nearly every free moment with his guitar, chasing a dream that still seemed far away. In 1974, when Tom Petty was 23 and still fighting to make Mudcrutch succeed, he married Jane Benyo. The wedding came just as he was preparing to leave Florida for Los Angeles, chasing a music career with no promise of success. It was a huge gamble, and married life was quickly swept into the non-stop pace of the music business. As Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers became more successful, he spent months on tour and long nights in the studio. The couple welcomed two daughters, Adria Petty in 1974 and Anna Kim Violet Petty in 1982. But the demands of fame meant Tom was often away, making it harder to balance family life with an exploding career. Behind the success, life at home grew increasingly difficult. Constant travel, recording sessions, and the pressure of the industry slowly created distance between the couple. While Petty focused on music, Benyo carried much of the responsibility of raising their family and managing everyday life. Over time, those pressures took a heavy toll on their relationship. By the early 1990s, the marriage had reached a breaking point. In 1996, after more than 20 years together, they divorced. People close to Petty later connected that difficult period with the deeply reflective songs he wrote around Wildflowers, where many lyrics explored loss, change, and personal struggles. The end of the marriage did not bring instant peace. Instead, it left Petty facing a quiet and painful new chapter. After years of performing for packed arenas, he now had to deal with the emotional weight of a personal life that had fallen apart. People close to Tom Petty noticed a major change in the years after his divorce. Decades of non-stop touring, combined with the pain of his family life, left him struggling with depression. During that difficult period, he developed a heroin addiction, adding another serious challenge to an already heavy chapter of his life. The addiction did not take over all at once. It slowly became part of his routine, alongside sleepless nights and the emptiness that often followed life off the stage. That emotional weight found its way into his music. While recording Echo, the atmosphere in the studio was much darker than before, with songs reflecting heartbreak, exhaustion, and personal struggles. Producer Rick Rubin recognized that something was wrong. He noticed changes in Petty's health and behavior and became increasingly concerned. Rather than ignoring the warning signs, Rubin reached out to Petty's family and spoke openly about the growing problem. Those conversations encouraged Petty to seek professional treatment. Recovery was far from easy. He had to face both physical withdrawal and the emotional issues he had spent years trying to outrun. Through treatment, support from loved ones, and ongoing therapy, Petty gradually regained control of his life. People who worked with him afterward remembered a clear difference. He returned to the studio with renewed focus, a calmer outlook, and a fresh appreciation for making music. After one of the darkest periods of his life, Tom Petty slowly found his way back to the passion that had inspired him from the very beginning. After treatment and rehabilitation, Tom Petty entered a quieter chapter of his life. As the chaos surrounding addiction faded, a new relationship slowly became an important part of his future. That person was Dana York, whom Petty had first met at a concert in Texas during the early 1990s. At the time, Petty was still married, so their meeting was limited to a few brief conversations backstage. Years later, after his divorce and during one of the hardest periods of his personal life, they crossed paths again. This time, the timing was completely different, and their connection began to grow. While Petty focused on rebuilding his life, Dana was working in education and raising her son. Friends and colleagues noticed that her presence brought a calmer atmosphere into Petty's world. Because she was not part of the rock music scene, She offered a sense of balance away from the constant pressure of fame and touring. In 2001, the couple married in Las Vegas and later celebrated with a smaller family ceremony in Malibu. Their relationship became an important source of stability as Petty continued managing the demands of a career that had already spanned decades. People who worked with Petty often remembered seeing Dana during tours not as part of the show, but as someone who helped keep his life grounded. Like any long-term relationship, they faced challenges, especially with the demands of constant travel, but many close to Petty believed her support played a meaningful role throughout his later years. Dana York adjusted to life with one of rock's biggest stars, while Tom Petty learned to embrace a different kind of family life. Dana's son became part of their household, and Petty gradually settled into the role of a stepfather. After years of chaos, he found a more balanced routine that blended music, family, and quieter moments away from the spotlight. Friends noticed a change in Petty during those years. The man who had lived through fame, addiction, and personal heartbreak seemed more at peace. He continued recording and touring, but he also made more room for life at home, enjoying a steadier pace whenever he could. Even in his later years, the stage remained a huge part of his life. In 2017, Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers celebrated their 40th anniversary with a nationwide tour. Fans packed arenas across the country, singing along to classics like American Girl, Free Fallin', and Learning to Fly. For many, the concerts felt like a celebration of memories that had lasted generations. The final show took place on the 25th of September 2017 at the Hollywood Bowl. No one in the crowd knew it would be Petty's last performance. Just 1 week later, on October 2, he was found unconscious at his home in Malibu. He was taken to UCLA Medical Center, where he died at the age of 66. Authorities later reported that his death was caused by an accidental overdose involving multiple prescribed pain medications. People close to Petty later shared that he had been performing through severe pain from a serious hip injury during the final tour. Even so, he chose to finish every show before seeking surgery. His passing stunned the music world, and fans everywhere returned to the songs that had defined his extraordinary career. Tom Petty's music was never just another passing trend. His songs told honest stories about freedom, determination, and chasing something bigger. That is why his legacy continues to grow, connecting people who first heard Breakdown on the radio in the 1970s with younger listeners discovering Free Fallin' today. In American rock history, Petty is remembered as a songwriter who stayed true to his style while continuing to create music that stood the test of time. His songs never depended on flashy performances or complicated tricks. Instead, they connected through unforgettable melodies and genuine emotion. They still play in cars, bars, movies, concerts, and in the memories of millions of fans around the world. Whenever Runnin' Down a Dream or I Won't Back Down starts playing, it feels like Tom Petty never truly left. His music still captures the feeling of an open highway, the wind rushing through the windows, and the promise that the road ahead is always worth taking. While many artists belong to a single era, Petty's songs continue finding new audiences year after year. His career was filled with incredible highs, painful setbacks, bold decisions, and unforgettable music. Through it all, he left behind a catalog of songs that continues to inspire fans and musicians alike. That lasting impact is what makes Tom Petty one of the most respected names in rock history, and his music will likely keep reaching new generations for many years to come. If you enjoyed this story or learned something new about Tom Petty, let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear your favorite song or memory. And if you want more stories about the legends who shaped music history, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with your friends. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.